Hello there. Interesting video today. We're going to look at the issue of currency, and we're going to learn a very important thing, that when currency is issued and withdrawn, it has no effect on the money supply. It's important to know that our monetary system today is a deposit-based system. Most money is in the form of deposits. And so, make a note here that that deposits are the primary money supply, and currency is really secondary. Currency is only about 10% of M2. So the point I'm driving at is people use currency, but currency is kind of an optional money today. Deposits are really the foundation of the system, with currency being something that's issued as people want it. There probably will be a day when people will no longer request currency because it'll be considered too inconvenient to use. Paper money is, as we've talked about earlier in the course, it's not as good a medium of exchange as electronic money is for most transactions. So let's go ahead and walk through these principles. This video will not take very long, but some of the concepts are very important, and I want to walk through these with you. Excuse me. When someone withdraws currency from a bank, they have to first have a deposit. Okay, you can't go to a bank and say, I would like $100 without having funds deposited there. And so you have to presume before currency is issued and withdrawn that there's already deposits in existence. Okay, that's an important idea. So we're going to first of all look at what happens when currency is withdrawn, and then we'll look at the issuance of the currency, where it comes from, and we'll learn that it comes through the Federal Reserve System. And even though the bills are actually printed by the U.S. Department of Treasury, the Treasury Department, that in fact it's the Fed who issues them, and only issues them because banks request them, and banks only request them because customers want them. Okay, when customers stop wanting currency, it'll no longer be available because banks won't carry it. It takes up space. You have to have vault space and certain security measures to carry currency. And when people stop wanting currency, banks will stop requesting it from the Fed, and the Fed will not have the U.S. Department of Treasury print it. Okay, so anyway, let's take a look here at Bank X. And again, I encourage you to write these notes down. This is, of course, a video, so you can stop the video, and if I'm going a little too fast, you can jot your notes down and then continue the video. So let's say that somebody goes to Bank X and they want to withdraw $100, and they want to withdraw it in the form of currency. So in other words, they're not writing a check or swiping their debit card to move the funds. They're actually wanting to take possession of the money themselves in the form of paper. So they go to the bank and they fill out a little withdrawal slip or whatever, or they go to the ATM machine and they punch the buttons correctly. And at the end of the day, this is what it looks like, that if somebody withdraws $100 in cash from Bank X will have a negative deposit, which is a withdrawal, and that will pull $100 in reserves out of Bank X. Remember, this is dollar for dollar. Every dollar added to deposits adds a dollar to reserves. Every dollar taken away from deposits takes away a dollar of reserves. Then if you come down here and look at the little accounting that I did a little balance sheet, if you will, that currency in circulation has gone up. Currency is only in circulation if it's held by someone outside the banking system. So any currency in the vault is not it's part of reserves, but it's not part of the money supply. That's very important. I'll say that again. Currency that's in the vault is part of bank reserves, but it's not part of the money supply. Knowing that will change your life, because knowing that will change your grade. Yeah, it's an important idea. So now currency in circulation has gone up by $100. Okay, because it's being held by, this currency is being held by someone outside the banking system. But deposits go down by $100, so you can see here that the net effect is zero. There's no effect on the money supply. No effect on the money supply. So let's go down. Well, let me back up a second. Being the teacher I am, I want to repeat myself. So how does a cash withdrawal affect the money supply? It doesn't. It doesn't. Okay? It doesn't. It simply transforms money from an electronic form to a paper form. So when you withdraw cash, all you're doing is transforming your money from electronic money to paper money. And if you take coins, it's to coins. Okay, now let's look at the issuance of currency. Where does currency come from? First of all, let me again remind you, if you look at a Federal Reserve note, by the way, currency in the United States is called a Federal Reserve note. If you look at a bill, a $5 bill, $20 bill, $100 bill, you'll see Federal Reserve note printed across the top of it. These bills are not printed by the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve contracts with the U.S. Department of Treasury and has the U.S. Department of Treasury produce the bills. It looks like the Treasury Secretary has signed off on the bill, and that person has signed off on the bill, but that's simply decorative handwriting on the bill. The bill is printed by the U.S. Department of Treasury, but issued by the Federal Reserve System. That's a big deal, because the Fed ultimately is in charge of money. Remember? Okay? So let's say we have I'm looking here at the Fed's balance sheet, and I'm looking at a hypothetical bank's balance sheet. Let's say that this bank has $100 in vault cash, $100 in vault cash. That also shows up on the Federal Reserve's books as a liability. Any currency that the Fed issues, or any currency that is put into a bank vault, is going to be recorded on the Fed's books as a liability. Federal Reserve note, the word note indicates that it's in essence something owed. In olden times, if you owed someone a note, olden times, I mean, this isn't the term we use today, but back in history, if you had taken out a note from someone, you basically had borrowed. So a Federal Reserve note is on the Fed's books as a liability, and that's what we see right here. So any currency that it's issued that's in the vault of a bank shows up both on the Fed's books and on the bank's books. These are really mirror images. Banks can also make deposits with the Fed. These are electronic, and in fact they do, and can earn some interest on these deposits. So this bank here has $500 or $500 million or whatever the number is on deposit with the Fed. And again, that shows up on the Fed's books as a liability. These are, whether it's vault cash or whether it's deposits with the Fed, these are categorized on the bank's books as reserves. So reserves can be in two basic forms, vault cash or deposits with the Fed. Most of a bank's reserves are going to be in the form of deposits, because again, banks, relatively speaking, don't carry a lot of vault cash because people don't use a lot of cash. And so you see on the liability side over here, the bank's reserves show up on the liability side of the Fed as what? Vault cash and deposits, electronic deposits. Okay? Now, just to, I'm not going to redraw this, I'm going to just make a quick point. If, let's say that it's getting, maybe around the holidays, maybe around Christmas, the Christmas holiday, Christmas, New Year's holiday, and banks have discovered that people tend to come in and draw out more cash around that time. Then what the bank can do is it can request more cash because it knows it'll have customers coming in and it doesn't want to run out. Why? Because banks want to keep customers happy. So if you go to your bank's teller machine and there's a sign on it that says, hey, we've run out of cash, tough luck, you're not going to be very happy with that. So banks realize that there are ebbs and flows in people's cash preferences, and around the holidays people tend to want to carry more cash. So let's say that this bank wants to increase this to 150. Well, what it would do is pay for that currency by reducing its deposits. And notice that the level of reserves doesn't change. So how does a bank actually acquire more currency or Federal Reserve notes? It simply pays for it with its deposits. What the Fed does will issue more currency to that bank, maybe another $50. Let's say it's in millions, 50 million, but it's going to reduce this deposit to 450. So notice that there's no change, though, in the total level of what? Total level of reserves. This has no impact on reserves. And if this has no impact on reserves, guess what? It has no impact on the money supply. We're still at, the level of reserves in the banking system hasn't changed. It's still at the same level. It's just the composition of those reserves have changed. More of those reserves are now in the form of currency that the Fed has issued. Okay? And then, again, banks aren't holding vault cash just to hold it. I mean, that's silly. They're expecting people are going to come in and withdraw it. But maybe after the holidays, people may want to put that cash back in a bank. Because again, after those cash transactions have taken place, most people most of the time prefer to use deposits. Okay? This is in your e-workbook. I wanted to put it on a video. I think it's an important idea that, again, I'll summarize that when currency, Federal Reserve notes, or what we call cash, is issued means is created, moved from the Fed to the bank, that has no effect on the money supply because it has no effect on bank reserves. And when someone comes to the bank and withdraws currency from the bank, they already have to have a deposit. So really all they're doing is changing the composition of their money from electronic money to paper money. Okay? All right, we'll wrap up here. I hope you learned something here, and we'll see you soon, hopefully. Take care.